The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Welcome to June 12th. Welcome to Friday and our next California Nevada chats. Again, we are grateful to have everyone here with us today, and certainly as a part of the District of Southern California, Northern California, PGA, all our colleagues and our team members that help put this together on a weekly basis. It's really been rewarding and guiding for all of us to be together during these times. So, our industry continues to expand as here we are Friday, another weekend, and this weekend brings more openings in terms of the types of business that are opening. There are some restaurants that will now go to dining in. There are gyms that'll open, movie theaters that'll be opening. So that's all very positive. And at the same time, we are aware and sensitive about the social environment of today, and how can we use and do use golf, as a proponent of and as part of the healing. So much has been going on. Certainly, it's great to be now watching the second round of the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial. A great event, little different, not seeing the crowd or hearing the noise, but we are playing golf at the tour level, so we're very, very grateful for that. We have an amazing lineup this morning, and we have our CEO of the PGA of America, Seth Was, with us. Our Chief Membership Officer, John Easterbrook, is with us. Marvel Bernard is with us. Marvel is the PGA LPGA member and also president of the LPGA Professional Division, and of course our Southern California Golf Association Director of Government Affairs, Mr. Craig Kessler. So we have a full lineup, many things to discuss this morning, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce and toss the microphone to our Northern California PGA Section President, Dede Moriarty. Dede?
Thanks, Len. Hi, Len. Hi, Tom. Hi, Tony. Great to see everybody. Seth, it'll be great to hear from you. Thanks for being here. John and Marvel, there's a lot to do today, but I always appreciate the opportunity to say hello. Golf is getting slammed in San Francisco, and hopefully we're holding our own. People are starting to teach, which is great, and we're even starting to do outdoor dining. So hopefully things are looking up, and we'll keep golf open and go from here. But thanks for the opportunity, and we'll throw it to Tony.
Well, thank you, Dede. I appreciate it. And just to see everybody's faces this morning, and thank you for joining us, and appreciate the opportunity. I apologize for missing last week's call. I'm looking forward to getting caught up here. We had our member at the club, so that was nice to get things rolling back here, and we're phasing back in with everything. We will be opening our gym this weekend, as with certain restrictions and things like that, based on everything that's going on here in Orange County. But looking forward to getting caught up with everyone, and thanks to, it's nice to see we still have almost 100 people joining these calls. The good news is that it's less than 150, which we've been having, which means people are back to work, and that's a great thing. So without further ado, there's a lot more important things than to listen to what I have to say. So Tom, Len, thanks very much for the opportunity, and nice to hear your voice as well, Dede, and we'll see you all very soon, I hope.
Thanks, Tony. Just some quick remarks, and welcome everyone, and so good to be here this morning with you. As Len mentioned, a number of openings across California. We've also had, as you've seen on the news, and I think we need to be cautious, there's a general uptick of cases around the country, particularly with our neighbors and in various counties in California. So with that, I think it points to the importance of us following the guidelines, whether it be county, whether it be back to golf, that we need to work with and work by in order to keep golf as the number one outdoor activity in the state. If you recall, that's what we're classified, and we're very fortunate to be included as an outdoor activity. And we don't want to lose that fortune. So following the guidelines and being safe, being responsible, keeping our distance, using the face covers when necessary and mandatory, and just do everything that we can do as operators to continue to enable our golf facilities to be open. We can't afford to go backward, that's for sure. So we need to pay attention to that, and we appreciate what everybody's doing to do so. And it's a team effort, and we sincerely appreciate that. So thank you for that. And with that, thanks again for being here. Len, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And so I'd like to introduce the CEO of the PGA of America, Seth Wasat. Seth, thank you for your time this morning, and also to yourself and to John, the absolute tireless work that has been accomplished on a couple of fronts that are very, very relevant today, and certainly not to discount anything that's been done. The Back to Golf guidelines and also phase 2 of the Golf Emergency Relief Fund. I can say that here in California and Nevada, our 2 sections, we've used the Back to Golf guidelines in many, many cases with many, many counties, and have received kudos for that and well done, and even have them used by other industries as a model with the protocols, which has allowed us to expand from playing into teaching now and into merchandising and such. So thank you for that. And Seth, for the kickoff and the PGA initial funding, or at least the challenge, if you will, of the initial funding of $5 million into the Golf Emergency Relief Fund. Phase 2, which has been open for about a week now, I know is closed, but I know some have already received funding from phase 2. Members have emailed and texted to express thanks, and I know of cases where some have even donated some back. So as many as can be helped will be helped. As we read even in our PGA Daily News this morning about golf being so widely endorsed, difficulty in getting tee times because of the demand, which is great. We're playing again in Texas, and also our acknowledgement and commitment to our diversity and inclusion, and the progress in Frisco. So Seth, that was a lot. Your choice as to what you'd like to handle, but thank you so much for being with us and everything that you've done for us.
Well, thanks, Len and Tom and Tony and Dede and everybody out there. It's flattered to be, included in these things, and surprised that, most people that hear from me once don't want to ever hear from me again. So I'm very flattered to be asked back. I hope everybody's, safe and healthy out there. And boy, it's been a really complicated time on the planet, right? And we're fighting one battle, obviously, on the COVID side of things, and now you watch parts of our country burn over the last few weeks, which is all hard to watch for all of us for all the obvious reasons, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. In terms of the golf, no particular order, but Len, I'll talk about the relief fund first. We have funded not only the $5 million but the $2.5 million match, and we will be close to doling out $10 million or so. We have concluded, as you said, the applications on the second phase. We had over 2,500 applications there, so it's about what we were looking for. It feels like the 10 million is going to get to the right people and to those that are most needy, if you will. And so we absolutely feel good about that. The amount of nice notes that we've gotten from so many is has been very rewarding, and exactly why we did it. So that feels like that was handled if not perfectly, awfully well, and feel good about that. In terms of Back to Golf, John Easterbrook, who's on the line also, as well as Jeff Price, have done an incredible job of rolling that out. We engaged some health experts early on, and they have been really useful. Infectious disease experts that have helped us throughout have been totally engaged. As you've heard in the past, we went the added step of going to the CDC and having conversations with them. And they, rather than being, a large bureaucracy kind of overwhelmed, they actually were totally engaged with us. We're very appreciative that we reached out, that we were, that we were proactive in this, and we kind of put golf from maybe the questionable list to the good guy list, if you will, of good actors in terms of being responsible about things. We're seeing, the growth of, the expansion and going from one phase to another. So the way that we set it up, following the CDC guidelines, has been very useful as we've added services, as Tom talks about. You're absolutely right, Tom, that, we still need to be patient on this. If we rush it, I think you could go backwards, and there's always been that risk. And I think that would feel really awful, to have something taken away. And so, just every locale is different, and we're not trying to convince any location to do more than they're comfortable with, but we want to have the responsible way to bring it back, and those guidelines have been very well advertised and followed. We brought in the entire industry to be a part of this through allies, and it took a little extra time up front, but it was well worth it. We're seeing, and if you're watching any of the coverage this week, which I'm sure we all will, the PGA Tour is weighing in on the Back to Golf initiatives or PSAs as well. And Jay Monahan talked about it in all his interviews this week, whether it was CNBC or Golf Channel or elsewhere. And so everybody's thinking about the game. And so that's a terrific opportunity for us all. Our next phase of this is going to be, how do we take this moment in time where everyone is coming back to golf, not just those that have, or all of us addicts who are in it every day, but lapsed golfers, families are out there. Anecdotally, you're hearing just very different kind of stories of who's coming. And so I think it's a moment in time that can become kind of a generational opportunity to grow the game, which is what we've talked about forever. And because of our natural advantages, because at its core it is a walk in the park, because it's a safe refuge, and people are trying to figure out ways to do that and spend time with family. We are now trying to think about how do we make this a lasting thing rather than 10 minutes of fame. And so I've challenged everybody to think about if you rolled back the clock and saw the Tiger effect back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and what would we do differently this time to capture that growth, right? Rather than just build a bunch of golf courses, which subsequently a lot of them get shut down. Like, how would you fuel that growth? And every path to that, frankly, leads back to what we do for a living, which is make the game more welcoming, more fun, to make sure that people get good at the game. And so it brings back teaching and PGA professionals as the folks to best equipped to do that. So Jay Monahan and myself and Mike Wan are going to convene a series of kind of group discussions with equipment manufacturers, media, Top Golf, kind of those players in golf, to think about, as an industry, how do we take this moment in time to grow it, and how do we grow it in a different way? How do we make the game look a little bit more like the world, so we can make the world look a little bit more like the game? How do we make it more welcoming? Is an obvious invitation to do that. So grow the game, but grow it in a different way. And so you'll stay tuned for that, and we're going to try to create, take this moment to play offense as opposed to defense, which is what we've been doing up to this point. On the championship front, we couldn't be more excited, Len, to come to your backyard at Harding Park. You'll likely see an announcement next week from us and the state and the city, kind of reaffirming our commitment and our excitement about being in San Francisco. It will, 99% be without fans. We've said that for a long time, that we have to respect California's rules on that, to that effect. I think could be a game day decision, as we get closer, if things open up, that maybe you have some walk-up fans at some point, but that's more of a dream of my part than a reality. So we should have some announcements next week on that front. We're learning, a lot from what's going to happen on the tour between now and then. We're certainly watching closely what's going on in Fort Worth. I talked to Jay yesterday, and just kind of asked him how it was going. And I said, is it really cool or is it really weird? And he said, a bit of both, right? But their protocols have worked very well. They've tested everybody within the bubble, and really have had zero problems with that. They've had very good reviews from the players. They've been able to turn it around and the testing around in a couple hours, and so it's been a nice start to it. And we think having be more or less the same sport on television is going to add to that whole back to golf opportunity that we've talked about. And then the last thing I'll talk about, Len, is and Tom, is what you introduced at the end, and that's what's kind of gone on in our country in the last couple of weeks. And at first, I'd said applaud the letter that Tom and Tony wrote. I thought was very, very thoughtful and well done. And obviously, Susie and I have also sent our kind of heartfelt notes, mine to staff, hers to the membership. We've also held a number of internal events over the. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink here. I talk for a living these days, so my throat starts to go at some point. But we did some events with staff. We've had focus groups that have talked internally, and our plan in terms of how we want to be part of the solution, be helpful in this whole challenge that's going on in the country, is first of all, listening to our cohorts, standing side by side with them, affirming the injustice and inequalities that they've felt their whole lives, acknowledging that, and then ultimately having a real action plan going forward. And we're very proud of the D&I exercises that we've put in place over the last 5 years. Sandy Cross has driven that and has done a fantastic job with PGA Works and LEAD and a lot of the junior league scholarships and a lot of things that we're doing. But we think we need to double down on that and continue to do lots of new things. So we're going to actually host a kind of a conversation, if you will, with and invite all of our African American members to join a webinar with myself and the three officers, and Lynette Carty hosting as kind of the host of that to direct the questions. And so that's the first step. I don't mean that's the solution, but we need to collectively come up with real actions to make a real difference. And I think this is a moment in time, kind of again a generational moment, it's long overdue, frankly, to really address these issues and move the needle. So I'm actually really hopeful about this time. Obviously driven by very sad events. The first event was George Floyd, and then some of the the peaceful demonstrations turning into something the exact opposite of that. And as she said, hard, sad time for everybody, but one that I think creates a lot of hope for the future in terms of real change and real progress. So, so the last thing I'd say about it is, like, we don't view ourselves as a political organization, and certainly what I'm talking about now and your letter, Tom and Tony, I don't view that as politics. I view that as humanity, and being human beings, and we don't think that we should get into politics as a sports organization, but we should stand up for what's right and what needs to change. And so we are going to be active on that front in terms of using our game, our beautiful game, as a connector, and making it what we've always talked about, which is more welcoming and looking more like the world.
Okay, Seth, thank you. And Nikki, I believe you have a question, if not a couple for Seth.
Actually, he addressed it. The questions that came in were pertaining to the championship at Harding Park. So I believe those have been addressed. Thank you, Lynn.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Seth.
so Seth, thank you. And I will say this past Monday through our Northern California PGA Foundation, we have been staying in touch and having chats with our PGA Hope veterans. And that was the topic this past Monday. And as you say, it was very strong. It was a great step. It was very sobering. It was very learning, but it was most importantly the right thing to do. So
Yeah, and I agree, Len. It's just such a powerful moment and such a call to action, right? And we all have to listen to that and do what we can. And it's yeah, thank you. I think it takes a village, right? And this is going to be all of us weighing in and standing side by side.
Lynn, we did have one more question just come in. If Seth has a couple more minutes.
Sure, I'm fine, Nikki.
The question was asked.
Anything for you, Nikki.
Thank you, sir. Could Seth please discuss the Ryder Cup and the selection process for this year?
Sure. The selection process was actually announced this week. The captains has gone to 6 choices from 4. Normally it's 8 qualifiers and then 4 picks. Used to actually be 10 and 2. So it's gotten to be more of a coach or a captain sort of selecting his folks. We thought it made a lot of sense this year, and obviously this isn't just the captain asking for it, it's the Ryder Cup committee kind of opining on it and coming up with it. And the idea is this year there's going to be less data, right? Given all the disruption that we've all had, and that some folks may start slowly here after 2 months off and then get hot in August, and the ability to for the captain to have a little bit more flexibility in trying to choose who is playing was an important consideration. And so we're going with that for this year. And I would think it could or it may or may not become a permanent change. I think that's kind of up for debate, and we'll see how it goes this year. But it certainly made sense in what has been a truncated year. In terms of the Ryder Cup in general, it's you see a lot of things obviously in the press about no fans is not a Ryder Cup. We tend to agree with that. We're looking at every scenario. We're talking to Governor of Wisconsin, to all the local authorities in Sheboygan, which is the county it's in. We're obviously talking to the tour, the European tour, our media partners, et cetera, trying to figure out as things change and as the country reopens, is it realistic to have a Ryder Cup with 40,000 fans in September, or something that feels, if it's something less than 40,000, an amount of fans that we think makes sense, that still makes it a Ryder Cup. And we've talked to all our health experts. We've it's been exhausting. And the reality is we need to really make that final decision in the next couple weeks, because the build needs to start, and in fact probably already should have started, if we really think we're going to have it this year, or whether we're going to postpone it. And so stay tuned. Still a lot to discuss with a lot of people. We've waited to the last minute for obvious reasons, because as things change, we want to change with them. And again, we stand with the principle that if we're fine with doing, we're obviously disappointed, but fine with doing a PGA Championship with no fans, because we think the content is there, and it'll be good for the city of San Francisco and for the golf world at large, and ourselves and our brand, and fans everywhere. But we don't necessarily feel the same way about the Ryder Cup, which is really driven by fans. It's for the fans. It's an exhibition. That's sort of the whole point, right? And so anyway, that's we're trying to figure out what is possible and what is safe and responsible, and what is in the best interest of the game first, and our brand, and certainly the Ryder Cup brand as well. So more to follow.
Okay, thank you, Seth. And we certainly are looking forward to hosting the PGA, where less than 60 days away at this point, which is very, very exciting, and hope to have you out here visiting with us. And as things improve, as you mentioned earlier, more possibilities do open, though there certainly are complex as we still work on complying with local social distancing and so on and so forth. But we look forward to having you here, Seth, and thank you again for everything that you're doing for us and with us.
Well, thank you all. It's an honor, and look, we took this from the beginning to say, this can be our finest moment, right? Like the membership has never needed us more, and that's a time for us to stand up and get everybody to the other side of this thing. And Golf Relief Fund was obviously a big part of that. How we've tried to work with every section to make sure that they can get to the other side. Delay dues, all the sort of things we've done have been with you all in mind, and I hope that's been noticed. I certainly have gotten lots of nice notes about that, and so we've I think in an odd way, having a common enemy has united us more than ever. I feel like we've come together as an association. I know that's true internally at the among the HQ folks, if you will, and I believe it's true across the association. I certainly hope it is. So, and with the championship coming and depending on what happens in Ryder Cup, we can still have a reasonable financial year as well. I hope you all are feeling the same way, that there's still enough time to kind of have land on all of us land on our collective feet, and from a leadership perspective in the industry, I feel like we've been the gatherer in a lot of things, whether that be back to golf, whether it be around the scheduling of the tour, and a variety of other sort of thought leading places. We've stepped up, and so I think we've so far had a pretty good crisis. I'm not declaring victory. I don't think we're done for sure, and there's we'll continue to try to be responsive and proactive on thinking about things, but. It's been a it's been a really long few months, and I hope we get back to normal. But in some ways, it's been gratifying in the sense of how we've come together and how we've stepped up. So all of us. I don't mean us at HQ. I mean the organization. So thank you all. Good luck to everybody, and look forward to seeing you in August.
Seth, this is Nikki. Just one more confirmation. The email that you included in the letter from you and Susie, that is inclusion@pgahq.com?
Yes, I think. Check it right now. I think that's right.
And that you would encourage anyone to send their thoughts?
Yeah,
or,
please. Would love
suggestions to that email address.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
And they've come in and, again, we've gotten really nice feedback, generally speaking, but there's been tons of responses, and we're learning a lot from those. And, I've always viewed our job as a leader is to be a better listener than you are a talker. I didn't just prove that over the last 20 minutes, but we want to hear from people. We want to, good and bad. What can we be doing better? We're not having pride of authorship in anything we're doing. We're trying to, serve and learn and be better. So please respond in any way that you would like.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Thank you for your time, and we'll just keep going. We're on the right path, and we'll stay together, and we'll stay through it. Now I'd like to introduce our PGA of America Chief Membership Officer, John Easterbrook. John, again, our thanks to you. You've been on the front lines with our partners. You've been on the front line with the CDC. You've been on the front line with other medical experts, financial experts, and so on and so forth to create everything that is now out there and becoming truly guidelines at a higher level. We did have one of our local health officials on our chat last week who was very complimentary of everything that the golf industry has done, the PGA of America has done, and that's wonderful to hear. So John, thank you, and it's all yours.
Thanks, Len. I won't take a lot of time. Seth and Tom covered a lot of back to golf and what's going on kind of globally. I will tell you about the changes we And I would say, we met last Friday with our medical experts and got through a number of what I would call crucial decisions as it relates to, again, most of you on the phone are operators. We wanted to make sure that we got those recommendations reviewed by the CDC on Monday, and we were able to do that Monday afternoon. For those of you that have been following Back to Golf, on Wednesday, we recapped the changes in 5 Things to Know, and then we posted basically Back to Golf version 4.0. In phase 2, the changes and that were dramatic, and somebody said this earlier, instruction early on had no instruction at all. We were able to change that. We changed it to instruction that had both the student and the coach in facial coverings. And now, in the latest rendition, we've been able to remove the facial covering as long as the physical distancing or social distancing of 6 feet is practiced. So in many places where it's starting to get warm, I know our teachers and coaches are going to love to be able to do that. And that was to us a big win. The 2 people riding in a golf cart, we were able to get the same household folks approved without facial coverings. And we were able to get approved 2 folks that weren't from the same household paired back together. I guess all of us again are operators on this call back to normal as long as the rider and the driver both wore a facial covering. As Craig will tell you, and Tom said this in his recap, this isn't simply a recommendation that we can as operators just kind of let happen. Jeff Price has consistently warned us that we don't want to be on the front page of the newspaper. We have an opportunity here to help economically and drive some revenues here and open up basically almost, I wouldn't say it's half, but it's certainly another third of doubling up people to get out on the golf course, because now, many places were having to limit their tee times because they simply didn't have enough carts. So we need to treat this with the respect it deserves. And operators need to make sure that they're telling the golf folks that are riding together to keep the masks on if they can't provide the physical distancing. This one, I think, will be one that gets checked by local health authorities. So I know Craig will do a good job of recapping and talking about the goods and the bads that are out there. This one has the potential to be difficult for operators to police, but it's, in my opinion, one that we're going to have to police. Your neighboring state of Arizona is going through a very, very significant negative backlash on the pandemic, and the virus is spiking, and that's they're all focusing on 2 weeks ago when Governor Ducey opened up Scottsdale and Phoenix. People, frankly, I saw some of these because my daughter wanted to go down to Scottsdale because her friends were all at the bar, and it's backfired. So they didn't follow the rules, and I think there's a lot of states watching that. 3 other things real quick: common touch points. So flag sticks are as long as you have the ability to disinfect, you can touch flag sticks and bunker rakes. Club storage was resumed, and that was a big one for a lot of our private clubs. And then probably the biggest one was what we call very interesting. All of us are golf operators, and we've been doing this, but to talk to the CDC on Monday and explain what a shotgun is was interesting. But I got them through that and called a modified event structure. So as long as you can create a staging area that I kind of just for a visual, I would say is like a NASCAR pit crew. So you have places where you can start from and places where you go back to that are designated. No different than the retail things that we're seeing out there. A lot of signage just to make sure that people aren't gathering pre or post. You can do that. And so those guidelines were relaxed, and they understood tee times. And again, as Seth said, at the core, it's a walk in the park, and that was how we got this thing started. This is a little bit of a leap of faith for local health authorities. So you got to use the Back to Golf guidelines to kind of show them that we've been collaborative and thoughtful and responsible, and then explain to them what you're doing. And if you can show really two things, that you've got the knowledge base on the physical and social distancing, and if you have some challenging areas, you're requiring facial coverings, you should be fine. So those were the oh, sorry, one other thing is we were allowed, cash was back allowed in phase 2, so that helped some of our public operations. So we had a big week, lots of changes. I think the updates will start to slow down because many local health authorities and local government authorities are making the decisions. It really is, Seth and I have spent a lot of time, and others, but a lot of time with scientists and medical experts on the phone, and it's a math equation. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to is managing, until we have a vaccine, managing the amount of people that get it against what our hospitals can take care of. So it really is local. So continue to work with your local authorities. We've had, 10s to 20s to 30s, I don't know how many, maybe 100 success stories. The latest was Colorado. The governor actually referenced Back to Golf and the guidelines and how our sport was being responsible. So, just use it for what it's there for. Use it to point to. And I think as Craig has done such a great job telling you all and coaching you all through the usage of this, it's helped. So good luck out there. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as I've said most weeks when I'm on these calls with you all, please send me an email. And I may not know the answer right away, but we'll get it for you. So stay safe out there. Good luck, and we'll continue to push forward as best we can. Nikki, if there's not any questions, I am done.
John, we had a couple come through. I know Craig is going to address one because it's related to our state and golf cars. One just came in. Not sure if you can answer this, or maybe Craig. Just heard that cash is back. I'm assuming accepting cash as a payment. Is this actually the case throughout California? Again, that may be something Craig could address.
Yeah, my guess is it's probably not accepted throughout California. It's probably accepted and I'll let Craig answer this, but in many counties, it's probably, with the retail back in and with food and beverage back opening, it's probably accepted, but I wouldn't imagine it's statewide yet.
Great, thank you. That's all we have right now. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, John, thank you so much for being with us. And now I'd like to turn it over to Marvel. Bernard, Marvel, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning with so much going on. Marvel is a LPGA member and a member of the Southwest section, as also a recipient of the 2018 PGA Player Development Award. And Marvel, was wonderful to be there for that and to see you receive the award and learn so much more about you, and is currently serving as the national president of the LPGA professional division. So Marvel, thanks for being with us. Congratulations on everything that you've done. I loved how you got involved in golf in the first place, and everything that you've done and continue to do for the profession.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. I really appreciate Tom reaching out to me to ask me to be on this call and to find out what the LPGA has done during this this really crazy time that we find ourselves living in. it's interesting to listen to Seth and John, and to me the key is communication, and we felt that from the beginning. My background, I didn't start out in golf. I didn't take it up till late, and so my background was in various forms of communicating with people, and I just am a huge fan of it, and I think it's super important. So when this all happened, my vice president, Allison Kurt, who is a member of your Southern California PGA, she and I had done a Facebook Live in March, and it's amazing to me now to look back at that and think that it wasn't on radar. It was happening somewhere else, and we didn't even talk about it. And then the next week, we were in it. So as you can imagine, and I know all of you out there, we all had to think on the fly and do things on the fly and try to figure out what to do. So what the LPGA did and what I did with our leadership team is we really ramped up the communication. And we started right out by communicating as many guidelines as we could. We were following the CDC, we were following the PGA. Our chief operating officer is a PGA member. I'm a PGA member, Allison, and so we were getting information hot off the presses when the PGA got it, and so we were sharing that with our membership. Something that's a complicating factor for us, that's good and a bad news thing, is we only have 1,800 members. However, they are spread across 27 countries. So a section, we have 5 sections across the US, and 1 international section that takes in all of Asia and Europe, Australia. So our Western section, for example, another LPGA member, Kim Coleman, her section, she's our section president, her section stretches from Mexico clear into Canada. So, the challenges that are happening in Southern California are completely different from those happening in Washington. And my challenges here in Southern Arizona are different than those happening in Florida. So we couldn't solve each individual problem, but what we could do is share the information that we had. So that was very important. Also being able to share the information on the golf, the emergency relief fund. Many of our members took advantage of that, and we were very grateful for the PGA taking the lead in that program. The LPGA is a smaller organization, very much funded by our tour, which is sidelined as all the tours have been. And so, we were having to be really judicious with finances to stay operating. So that was the first thing. Our headquarters staff has been amazing. They are working from home. And I say this all the time, you would never know that if you didn't know that. And it's a small team, but they have supported us in many, many ways. We are fortunate in the LPGA that our dues aren't due until December. So I know the dues situation, there was a little blip of controversy over that in the PGA, and we were kind of fortunate to have that situation pushed out down the road. And back in March, it felt like an eon until December, but here we are looking at those kind of dates. So what we did was we immediately relaxed our requirements for our certification units, which is the LPGA version of MSRs, and we pushed out the requirement to the end of next year. So we give people an extra, half a year to get, or a year and a half really, to get their requirements done. And then simultaneously, we created a bunch of events for people to get certification units from home. And I am incredibly proud of our members who stepped up to provide webinars, Zoom events. We had people doing junior golf events that were attended by people around the world. I remember one event, I'm looking at the attendee list, and there were people on from Ireland and England, and it was just amazing the reach that we had with that. So our Facebook page, we have had a Facebook page for our members only, and it has kind of languished in obscurity. It's every once in a while we would post something on it and people would chat it here and there, but now it is our source of communication. And I'm not gonna lie when I say I'm so proud of the back and forth communication that has come. I think communication is a two-way street, and right now in our current crisis, listening is hugely important. And to me, if you're not hearing even things you don't want to hear, you're not hearing the truth. So all of a sudden our members are connected, they're communicating more than they ever have, and I am incredibly proud of that. Next week I'm on a call with our Korean members. I'm hoping you're not hearing a big echo here. We have a member in Korea who will be translating for me, and I'll be reaching out to our Korean members. And you know, they've been ahead of us in this whole COVID-19 crisis, and very concerned about a second wave. And so we're going to be communicating with them next week. So that was the main thing, was to really communicate. I felt that it was important, the tone was important of how I communicated with the membership. You know, I didn't want to be doom and gloom, but on the other hand, I don't want to be stupidly perky either. You know, we're in a serious situation, but I just landed on being myself. You know, it's like, wow, this is some crazy stuff, and we're all in this together, and here's the resources I have, here's how I can help you. If I don't have those resources, I am going to find the person that does. And so with our smaller organization, that's how things got handled. You know, when someone reaches out to me in Texas and said, we're not teaching, and what do you suggest? You know, all I can do is put them in touch with other people that can help her, because here in Arizona, obviously things are a little bit different. I apologize that Arizona is having a little bit of a spike. I know that's making everybody nervous. So we'll see where that all lands. But the LPGA, to me, what makes us different is our size. We are small. There's 1,800. We're less than some of our PGA sections, but it also makes us creative and innovative in order to work together to do the very best we can. And right now we've got ideas coming in. Every time I communicate, I ask people to reach out with their ideas, and they are starting to do that. You know, something that's frustrating to me in any organization is when people say, well, we want to hear from you, and then you do communicate and nothing ever comes of it. It's like, you know, thank you for your idea, bye-bye. So we try not to do that in the LPGA, and right now we've got so many great ideas that we're implementing, and people are seeing that they're seeing that they're in charge of the direction of their own organization. So really what I would say from this crazy time, this unprecedented time, is that good things have come out of this. And we've not only kept an eye on the present, but we're keeping an eye, and we're having an eye out toward our future. And not only the immediate future, you know, when we're talking about the tours and playing with no fans and things like that, that's our immediate future, but what's in our long term, and how can we grow this organization? How can we attract the most diverse group of people? How can we support junior golf in the best way possible? How can we take advantage of this time to bring golf to the forefront? And I think we're in prime time for that. Seth mentioned that, and I think that if we don't take advantage of that, it is an opportunity lost. So again, really appreciate my being asked to be on this call, and I tell you that I'm the world's biggest fan of communication. I love this platform. I think it's so cool that you guys have done this, and there's nothing like it. So yeah, stay in touch with each other. This has given me a good idea for the LPGA as well. So I really appreciate being invited on this call, everyone. Thank you.
Marvel, thank you so much. And listening to you just now, and having listened to Commissioner Juan, your passion, the passion that both of you had, is just overwhelming and so positive. So great stuff, and thanks for being with us. So Marvel, as you've talked to some of the players recently, what have they been doing, as they could be doing based upon the situation, to stay in shape, to stay engaged, and so on and so forth? I'm sure, just as with any other professional player, they're really anxious to get back out there.
Yes, you know, I'm on the players on the board and this is what they're doing, and they're trying to play a lot, practice a lot, and I'm on Instagram with several of them, and I see that they are doing a lot of fun things recreationally too, but they're staying positive, and I'm always blown away on the board calls at the amazing questions they ask, and you know, how they drive their own tour as well. So they're just itching to get back out there. It's very important to them that it's done in the most safe manner. And I have to put in a plug for our commissioner, Mike Wan. He's an amazing person, and thank God we have him at the helm right now. He's an incredibly bright thinker and a forward thinker, and I love that they are working so hand in hand with other sport organizations and working together to get us all back out there in the best way possible.
So thank you, Marvel. And as you mentioned, there's no question that through this pandemic, how the industry has come together more closely than ever before. And we're very, very grateful for that, how we've involved and needed to involve other industries. And so our partnership grows and grows, and that's all for the good, because we certainly are stronger together. So thank you for being with us. Nikki, any questions or such for Marvel?
I don't have anything specific. Thanks so much, Marvel. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marvel. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we do, we will turn this over to our amazing Director of Governmental Affairs for the Southern California Golf Association, Craig Kessler. Again, Craig has been our conscience and our guide through this pandemic, and we've had a lot of success because of that, keeping the pulse on the states, keeping the pulse on the counties, keeping the pulse on the cities, and helping us all to make sense out of it. So, Craig, thank you and for your continued support and guidance, and we'd love to hear from you.
Well, Len, thank you. And I hope I can continue to hear from all of you. I've had some difficulty on today's broadcast, both by telephone and right now I'm by computer. So from time to time, the audio turns off. So if you ask me a question or try to intervene and I don't hear you, it's not because I'm being rude, it's because I don't hear you, but I'll do my best.
Greg, I think we've lost you. Okay, we're going to
These may be uniquely among those activities that that were peculiarly amenable to the social distancing and common touch point controls that were embedded in even the most severe of the health orders. Now, we couldn't win that case in the handful of weeks in which panic was setting in, but because we sustained it at the beginning, we were literally in most counties in California, and all of them in Southern California, golf was the first thing reintroduced to our lives. That was the good news. That's what we aimed for, and that's what we got. But because it was the first thing reintroduced, we had a lot of tender loving care. We ended up with the most prescriptive and very descriptive of orders, right down to every detail of the reopening, appropriately so. And that set a precedent so that we are still appendices to most of the health orders. And as events have unfolded and we've begun to open more and more things which are much larger than golf and much tougher to administer than golf. We're going to be moving towards gyms. You've heard that earlier. Theaters, day camps on a state mandated basis, soon to be some protocols for schools. And golf's been left a little bit behind. We're an extraordinarily small portion of the state's economy. And by and large, public health departments felt they had dealt with us. So we've ended up in a pattern in which changes are going to our orders for golf, and they're not even being published for 5 days, 6 days, 2 weeks later. So oftentimes the kinds of questions that are probably coming through right now, such as what can we do or what can we not do, are very difficult to answer, or sometimes the answer can't be confirmed by looking up the actual order yourself on a website. And I would challenge anyone. It's quite an adventure to find on LA County's website to actually find the appendix that covers the golf order, which is changing almost every other day. So we're moving towards I think what we're trying to do, at least internally, quietly, is move towards I won't call it looser, but less prescriptive, so that all of those things that are described about the operation of a golf course, the recreational operation, are put into the language that's more generic, put into the language that's now describing other things, put into a language that requires us to adopt means to an end, those ends being social distancing and common touch point control, in a less prescriptive fashion. Adopting means which, at the beginning of this, we understood that in order to even get the attention of public health officials to be the first activity restored, if we started going into details about the differences among facilities, particularly type of facilities, and if we had tried to, excuse me, I'm having the same problem as Seth Wall, we talk too much. If we were to try to point out the distinctions between let's say a 36-hole, very busy public golf course and a much smaller, much more remote, smaller membership private golf course, we would have lost their attention, and we would have approached them with a political conundrum that was a total non-starter in almost every county in the state. And we would have been not among the first things reintroduced, we would have been among the last things, and we probably would have been reintroduced without the kinds of prescriptive rules that we see today. So as we move forward, I think we're going to be looking and at least trying to advocate for a set of things which allows greater flexibility. Again, not based upon invidious distinctions among types of golf courses, but based upon the reality that's on the ground within those different kinds of golf courses. That may seem a little bit vague to all of you, and I know that everyone looks for certainty in these kinds of things, and it's hard to get certainty in a situation like this, understanding that the bandwidth of public health departments is a fraction of what it needs to be to deal with a pandemic and to deal with a total shutdown and then reopening of an economy. So by and large, where we stand is that the first goal we set for ourselves, we accomplished it, and we accomplished it magnificently. And I would agree with Seth Waugh's comments that we discovered a level of solidarity, not within your own PGA, but between the PGA and the other organizations, at least in the state of California. And it sounds like a little bit nationally. And that's a good thing, and that's something we can build on moving forward. But a time has come to begin thinking about how we move forward. Now, a week ago, we were all encouraged because there was economic news that indicated that maybe some of the doom and gloom that many of us had proposed about the long-term prospects of the economy might have been wrong. And as markets crept up, and as actually in May, jobs were restored rather than removed from the economy. But then again, you see that the other news has dawned on everyone, as the Federal Reserve Chairman has indicated that we're in for a long recession and probably a U-shaped recovery. And as you just heard, those numbers continue to spike up in the United States, and particularly spike up in those places where they were not problematic 6-8 weeks ago. Our neighbor just to the east of us, Arizona, is almost dangerously close to taxing their medical system's capacity to deal with COVID-19 and other emergency cases. And in California, despite our best efforts, we are also one of those states where cases are moving up. And what that caused, that created a level of uncertainty that caused the markets to tank yesterday. I don't know where they're moving today. They're probably not moving much one way or the other because we're not getting alerts on our cell phones about it. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but I think that what I'm briefing for right now is the need to begin thinking or pivoting towards what comes next. There are portions of traditional golf course operation that are definitely social and certainly business, and they will or won't be restored. They're starting to be restored based upon how their parallels or equivalents in the rest of the economy come or go. I think it's important, and you hear this message every week and you hear it from everybody, that what we've sustained in terms of recreational golf moving forward, we need to maintain that. And that will by and large be dependent upon operators and golfers themselves continuing to take seriously the fact that COVID-19 hasn't gone anywhere. The cases are spiking up. We will be looking at some kind of a second wave in the fall and winter. We have no idea about the severity. It could be like the Spanish flu, not likely. That was an extraordinarily virulent second wave. It could be extraordinarily minor. And I think every epidemiologist who knows about the subject will tell you they have no clue either, except that they're a little bit worried about the spiking that's going on now. And they're a little bit worried about the fact that one of the downsides of the shutdown is that we're nowhere near developing herd immunity. So we're almost dependent upon a vaccine, which at best is many, many months away, and at worst, maybe years away. So again, and I keep coming back to that one word and what it really is our next challenge, and that's uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. Consumers don't like uncertainty. Employers don't like uncertainty. And whereas we're better positioned, and we understand that, we're going to maintain that in the golf universe to continue at least with the recreational activity. And all the numbers I see, and I track them from a lot of municipal systems, indicate that May and June are just flat kicking it in the golf industry. Now, there's a little bit of a honeymoon period involved with that because persons were cooped up and they were looking forward to getting back on the golf course. But I think there's a lot more going on there than just a honeymoon. And it may explain to many of us why golf has been a popular sport and has endured for 500 years and is likely to endure another 500 years.
Okay, let's give Craig another moment. Okay, well, we hope that Craig makes it back shortly. In the meantime, I'd like to invite Kevin Fitzgerald.
Market.
Okay. Craig, are you back?
I guess. I don't know how much of that you missed. I guess I'm back. I have no clue as to what's going on. So maybe I ought to just sign off.
No, keep going.
Okay. I was at the point where our market is still the general economy, whether they're members of clubs, daily fee players, or those who go out to the municipal golf courses every weekend, or increasingly every weekday at this particular point. And so we, as an activity that's dependent upon, as a recreational activity where people need disposable income and the willingness to dispose of it in order to be successful, we have to be mindful that we need to begin pivoting towards really looking at those things we've identified during this crisis as our strengths and playing them up, because there's some very definite weaknesses moving forward. And that is, it's not clear whether all of the components of the business side of golf are going to be reintroduced anytime soon. And if they are reintroduced, we may lose them in a second wave. In addition to that, our market, even though they're flooding out there now, some of that flooding is based upon, quite honestly, a false sense that the all clear signal has gone out and that somehow we've beaten COVID-19. We haven't. It's still there, and it's going to be with us for a while. And when that begins to settle in, and you saw that in rather rapid fashion yesterday as everyone sold off in the markets, and as that begins to dawn on just regular persons and regular consumers, it's going to become more and more difficult to convince them to dispose of their disposable dollars to the extent they have them on golf. So I think that almost presages yes, we like to do our victory dance because we performed exemplary, but let's use those victories and let's use those things we've discovered as strengths to begin tackling what's going to be a tough couple of years, not just for our industry, but for a lot of industries. But keep in mind that we arrived at this moment, and while things were looking pretty good at the beginning of the year, they were looking pretty good at what we now know in February was the end of the longest economic expansion in American history. So you've got to put that in perspective. And now we're going into a recession. And if Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, knows anything more than the rest of us, he's predicting that unemployment will only go down to 9.3% at the dawn of next year. When we say only 9.3%, that sounds like a good number compared to today, but it's not a good number compared to previous recessions, although it's slightly better. It's a little bit better than the Great Recession, but the Great Recession hit 12% and very quickly started eroding as we went into a pretty rapid recovery by 2010, 2011, 2012. So those are the challenges moving forward. That's where we stand. And again, I'm encouraging all of us, no more than the guy talking right now, to begin focusing on tomorrow rather than almost at this point, we're sort of fixed in where we are, and we can keep, vetting the details. And no doubt there are a lot of details about it. Many of them are unknowable. I see there's a question about San Diego and teaching. Near as I can tell, there is no rule in golf anymore about teaching in San Diego. So as long as you go back to those first principles I talked about, whatever you do, if you're comfortable that it's practicing social distancing and common touch point control, you can probably do that. Now, I wouldn't say the same thing in Los Angeles County, where instruction is still private with face coverings, although I understand that may have come out of the order this week, but hasn't been published yet, and with common touch point controls. So with that, and I hope that more of what I said was heard than not heard. I'm having some difficulties with this broadcast today. I'll yield the floor, and if Nikki can still hear me, if I've raised any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thanks, Craig. I think you covered the San Diego instruction question. Can you speak to the question that we asked John earlier with cash being accepted as a payment? Any update there?
All over the map, and this is just a guess. I think if you're in Orange County or Riverside County, the answer would be yes. I think if you're in Los Angeles County, the answer is no. If you're in San Diego County, the answer is nobody knows. Because there's been a tension between the health officer and the Board of Supervisors almost from day one. There's been a tension, well, an extreme tension in Orange County. In fact, the health officer resigned and received death threats. Really a disgraceful thing. But that in that case, the Board of Supervisors prevailed. In San Diego, it seems to be a bit of a standoff. In Ventura County, I would guess that the answer is no. And that gives me an opportunity to raise the obvious. It has been both a good news and bad news thing that in California, our governor decided to handle this in a federated fashion, in essence, to set minimum standards and then not just allow, but encourage all of the counties to exceed them to the degree to which they felt their COVID-19 cases and political and other realities kicked in. That is actually the way we in the golf industry would prefer that environmental and particularly water issues be handled. And we're going to remind the governor of that moving forward as soon as we bounce back to some semblance of normality. But that has created an incredible amount of confusion, particularly if two golf courses are on near county lines, in which the rules can be quite different. And keep understanding that even an operator sometimes will become more strict than the rules applied because that's just simply their preference and that's their right to do. And that has created, like I said, an enormous amount of confusion. And for those of you who remember AB5, and that hasn't gone away, and we'll be talking, with any luck, we'll be talking about that again soon, it can be very uncomfortable when giving answers to questions that suggest nobody really knows. So you always go back to sort of the basic first principles, and whatever you're trying to get an answer to, analyze it through there, because this is not a command and control situation necessarily. Again, my whole purpose or my hope to convey today is that we looking at it a little bit more that way, because that's the way it was in order for us to come back online, literally first out of the box. But as time moves on, that becomes less and less true. And what becomes true is that golf needs to look at everything it does through the prism of social distancing and common touch point control. And if anything you're proposing to do crosses a certain line with either or both, don't do it. But if it stays within that line, but you're not sure whether it fits a rule, which is probably out of date, give it a shot and just monitor it. That's not a license to go crazy, but it's an encouragement to view this thing through the lens that I think is the appropriate way to view it, which is back to the first principles. I hope that answered the question, Nikki.
I think so. One more, Craig, real quick. Any indication on a timeline of when LA County might announce any new guidelines or updates?
I'm going to answer it this way. I am aware that there's a lag. LA County is the largest municipal government in the United States. So those things which are in the hopper and on the desk of the public health officer, and thus far, the good news is golf has conducted itself so admirably in that largest county in the United States that it has a very high, good reputation with LA County public health. So when proposals come forward to loosen things, whether it was initially instruction, right now it's probably group play. It may be even requirements of face coverings. It may be various other things. It's probably correlating our junior golf programs with the governor's day camp sanctioning that's coming out today sometime. Those things will probably get approved and they will change. The timeline is tough to know. Thus far, everything that golf sort of proposes or brings forward in that county gets approved. But there is a gap between sort of the tacit approval and then publishing it in the actual order, which is one of the reasons that I think, at least I am, and I think others and other organizations are trying to persuade that maybe the time has come to get away from a very prescriptive, separate golf order and have it be more generic and almost linked to other things. So if you're talking about in the future, junior golf programs coming back, because they're almost always, or junior golf teaching, which is almost always in a group setting, which is right now forbidden in that county. Maybe it should just simply hew to whatever the rules are for day camps, because there's enough parallels between the two. So rather than wait to go through the painstaking detail of coming up with very specific prescriptions and proposals that would cover it in a golf specific context, just simply link here, read it, look at the principles, moderate or operate your program in a way consistent therewith, and we'll be in good state.
Great, thank you, Craig. Lynn, that's all the questions we have.
All right, thanks, Nikki. Craig, thank you again for keeping the pulse on this, and certainly as we roll out, there's more, again, opportunity as more and more opens, but at the same time, that's bringing along complexity and other issues. So we all need to be aware of that. We all certainly need to pay attention to it so we can keep going. So I appreciate a couple, always appreciate your comments, Craig. A couple in particular. One is that, when we're done, or maybe now as we understand a little bit more about pivoting to our strengths, as you've mentioned, there are no best practices yet because we haven't been through this yet, but certainly pivoting to our strengths is the start of that. And then your comment recently about focusing on tomorrow, which we shall all do. So thanks again, Craig, for being with us. At this time, I'd like to ask our unfortunately, Southern California President Tony Latendry had to leave, but I'd like to ask for perhaps some closing remarks from our Northern California President, Dede Moriarty. Dede?
Hey, Len, thank you. Really great session today. Just want to thank all the speakers for just supplying us with the information that we need to keep current and keep us on the right track. So it's really, really appreciated. And, I would just say, let's keep doing what we're doing to make golf the hero. We should really be proud of what we're doing as an industry. And, I know Seth's not on the phone, but I really want to thank him for, as a San Franciscan, thank him for the update on the PGA. I know it's going to be great for the city, and I know it's going to be great for golf fans everywhere. So everybody have a great day. I wish I could see you all, but hopefully sometime soon in August, we'll get to see you. Turn it back to Len.
Okay, thank you, Dede. And to our colleague and Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer for the Southern California PGA, Mr. Tom Addis. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Len, and thanks to everyone for once again spending this time with us. And thanks to Seth and Marvel and John and Craig, of course, for their regular contributions that we're very fortunate to spend time and with everything that's going on and the activities of Southern California section. As most of you know, we're going back to our tournament programs and our junior golf Toyota Tour Cup on June 22nd. Those will be our first events back in it. So we're excited about that, and hopefully in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks now, we'll be on the golf course with our events, and that's pretty exciting. We've worked really, really hard to stay within the guidelines with all of our activities, and we feel very fortunate to be able to get back out on the golf course with the safety provisions and the guidelines that we've put together here in the Southern California section. I would encourage you to stay up to date as much as you can, whether it be the Back to Golf guidelines that are updated regularly, thanks to John and the rest of the PGA of America and the other organizations, and in particular with the new retail guidelines and food and beverage guidelines, which we've mentioned a couple times. And if you need information, don't hesitate to go to scpga.com on the screen, ncpgalinks.com, pga.org, and scga.org for all the information that you may need to help us all stay safe and be responsible for our actions and proactive in other areas as well. So again, thanks to Nikki, to Bryce, Caitlin, Tyler, Miller, everybody in the background. It looks like we're going to go at least a couple more weeks with this program. And I know next week we have Jeff Jensen with the Golf Course Superintendents Association, the regional director for the West. I'm sure Jeff will have some information. And then the following week, we have Mike Davis, the Executive Director, CEO of the USGA. So another good couple of weeks. And of course, we'll have Craig with us and John Easterbrook as well, Ken Farrell and Carol Pence. So again, thank you for staying with us. These have been great. We've enjoyed them. And everybody be safe and be responsible. Len, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And same here as an update for the Northern California section. We are back come this Monday, June 15th. We have events already scheduled. It's wonderful to have Golf Genius up. It's wonderful to see event registrations going on, starting with our senior division event next Thursday at the golf course at Copper Valley, which we originally knew at Saddle Creek. And the many registrations are ready for our semi-annual meeting on June 28th, which is going to be virtual. And again, just having the contact again with our section partners, and some of which are throughout the state, of course, and having the registrations coming in and the phone calls now, PATs, starting again next week. We're getting back to the things that we love to do, and the things that keep our membership going, and such as a PAT, even create our new members, the educational possibilities, the proliferation of more webinars, and Tom, and to the team in Southern California, and our district director, Bill Trojanowski, thank you so much for yesterday's catalyst regarding the ADM model. That was just tremendous. And again, I think a sign of how we've come together and are approaching this as a team, a really large team, but that's okay. That's great. We're grateful to be such a close team. So thanks to Seth, and of course to John Easterbrook. Marvel, thank you for taking your time and again, your passion is just absolutely evident and fits in just tremendously with Commissioner Wan. So great stuff going on there. Craig, for your continued guidance. And as Tom mentioned to the team, you know, behind the scenes, Nikki, Bryce, Caitlin, Tyler, and everyone else. So ladies and gentlemen, as we say now, please continue to be responsible. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk very soon.